side control and top arm and head control. And we're going to deal with ways of dealing with this bottom frame should you get that in. There's a couple of things that you have to remember. Number one, in side control, if I spread myself out too wide, there's always going to be space. So now we're working with the fact that we have top control here. So we're pretty high up on the person's abdomen here. I'm blocking his rib cage with my elbow and knee, not his hip, because if I slide to the hip, there's always going to be space. So we have a good control here. You can use butterfly grip or gable grip. For the purposes of talking, I'm not going to put too much pressure on. But here are the two traditional ways of dealing with this frame. So let's say John bridges into me. He gets his frame in here. I can, of course, just in gi and no gi, I can lift and sit through to a Kizakatami position. That's very, very common. That's difficult if he pinches and pushes that elbow into the ground really hard. Sometimes if he flares his elbow just a little bit, I can also shimmy this knee around to then collect and shelf his arm. However, that's only going to last for a matter of a couple of minutes once the person knows that if they tuck their elbow here, even if they have their forearm a little bit here, I can't deal with that arm as easily. So here's a couple of options to do that. If you feel that this arm is a little bit on an angle but the elbow is tucked, maintain control of the person's head and arm. You might even want to flare your elbow just a little bit for balance. And now I'm going to slowly walk towards his legs, trying to move his legs away just a fraction. Then I'm going to use my leg that's closest to John's head to trap his forearm. So I'm going to walk in, try to scoop his forearm, and then I'm going to try to pin him. John doesn't have many options right now, but one option he does have is to bridge really hard so the arm slips out in this direction and comes up here. That's not a bad thing because now we just sit in and we control it really hard. If I feel that John is tucking even his palm on his chest in a very typical old school defense, then I have to use my leg that's closest to his legs. So if I feel that he's tucking here, I can't lift, I sure as hell can't do Kizakatami, and it's now difficult to use this leg. I have to be very nimble, switch my back leg and start opening it up. And now we pass it over to the same leg that we just used. And now we're in the same scenario. From here we keep the same hand configuration, and now we can start transitioning to mount. So what we've effectively done is removing a shield that makes the transition into mount easier for him to defend, which is where he's going to be looking for space to get out, and harder for me to get off mount. So once we trap the arm, that's easily done. However, he still has legs here to do a little bit of defense. So once we start transitioning, if I'm not careful and I just start moving over, he'll catch my leg. Not all hope is lost here either. I can continue, I can bail and I can sit down to maintain control, and now I can re-establish upper body control. However, in terms of a transitional space, I don't want that to happen. So I start sliding my knee towards his hip and his abdomen, but now I've got to forcefully hook his leg with my foot. So I use the front of my foot to hook as we drive. As I drive my knee towards the ground, I can't have my hook on his hip. It has to slide down towards his knee just a little bit. But here's a very important detail. If I relax this foot, John can still weave out. He can weave that leg behind, and now we end up in the same scenario. So it's very, very important that foot is hooking nice and strong. And now we're going to transition into mount. The movement here now is a switch of the hip Then I kick my leg onto the ground. To make that effective, I need to use this leg here to hold myself. It's almost like a rope when you're climbing a mountain. If I don't do anything with this leg and I just do this, I'll be bridged off very easily. But as I switch and I hook him in, now he doesn't have a chance to bridge me. Because I've got a strong base up top and I've got something holding me in. So I'm effectively pulling John to me as I'm pushing my hips forwards. As we flatten him out, I have to bring the foot that we kicked onto the ground on his hip. Straight to the hip. And now we connect elbow and knee again in the top position. So let's look at all of those details. I've established side control. I've got top arm control, but he's managed somehow to hide this arm. So if I just try to step up and over now, I'm in trouble. So we need to eliminate that shield. We keep the control as we walk away. I use either my back leg or my front leg to peel and control. And now we start working different elements of upper body control, if you please. As we walk over, we start to trap his thighs. As I socket kick the floor, straight away I hook myself in and I bring my foot to his hip. And from here, we've got a very, very strong position to start trapping arms, moving into armpit punches. And now you've got back takes and armbar submissions readily available in both gi and